with loose leash walking, getting your dog to come when called, and barking and lunging, particularly on walks. So I've got some things I want to help you all with. You all know I have a lot of videos where I demonstrate these things for you so that you can work with your own dogs at home. But sometimes you just need to talk it out, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm hopefully able to really get in the weeds on this and help you. One of the common themes throughout this video will be behavior follows feelings. That's what I want you to really think. We'll keep coming back to this to help you understand it as we go. It's also important that we understand we need to set up the environment appropriately for many of these exercises we're going to talk about, and I'll get more into that as well. I'm also going to give you tips on what to do when elements in the environment break down. For example, when you are training in public, things don't always go as planned, and I'll tell you what to do in those cases as well. So by the end of this live video, my hope is that you'll leave with some simple training exercises, some drills you can do with your dog, and some insight and know-how as to, how to get to where you and your dog want to be. I do want to thank BarkBox and Pupford for sponsoring the Dog Training Revolution. BarkBox actually has kind of an amazing deal, not kind of, the most amazing deal they've ever had right now. When you do, links are in the description, by the way. But when you sign up for a BarkBox or a Super Chewer subscription, they are going to give you a free extra toy with every single box for a year, not just the first box. They've done it where they'll give you an extra toy in the first box, but this is next level. Quickly, the difference between BarkBox and Super Chewer comes down to durability. Though this is a bark toy, very durable still. Don't get me wrong. They're so creative. Look at this. There's a squeaker there. Oh, there's only a squeaker in one bun here. I'm trying to see if it has a second hidden squeaker. No? Okay. Sometimes they do. Keeps you guessing. Dogs love that. So nice squeakers, good textures. You can hear the crinkly texture. I should put it there. Hopefully my mic is working. You never know with these things. And here's an example of a Super Chewer toy. It's still in its packaging, but you get the hint. I mean, that's a nice squeak right there. Look at that. I barely have to press it. So really good dog toys. BarkBox knows how to make good dog toys is the bottom line. Anyway, check that out in the link below. And of course, Pupford 30-Day Perfect Pup is a free 30-day course. Absolutely no catches, I promise. I'll have a link to that in the description as well. And basically, that is a crash course in training your dog free of charge. I worked with Pupford to do that, who makes amazing treats, which I happen to have right here. I'll explain why I have this later. And there's nothing like Pupford treats out there. They really are absolute top tier, and I strongly recommend them, even if they weren't my sponsor, to be clear. But you can independently fact check all of that. Now, let's get into loose leash walking. Before I do that, you might notice that we have a super chat goal here. That is not to line our pockets, I promise. We just decided to do this at the last second, Bree and I. And we are going to contribute those super chats to causes that we think are important, that are centered around decolonizing animal care. And, that's something that if you care about that along with us, that's something you can contribute to. By decolonize animal care, what I mean is we need to raise standards in the field that aren't based on simply pushing animals around and viewing them as inferior or something to be controlled, and rather something that we should be building relationships with, especially in the animal care field. So there's a lot of objectifying of animals in the professional field these days, and that's something we're committed to fighting. Okay. So say you have a dog that pulls on a leash really hard, right? First, we want to understand why they're pulling really quickly. Why do dogs pull? They walk faster than we do. They may have pent-up energy. They may be curious about their world. These are all things we want to address before we attempt to teach our dogs how to walk properly on a leash. And typically that means without a lot of tension on the leash. Now, so setting up the environment is really important. If you're hoping to fix leash pulling during those moments where your dog is pulling actively. So you're out at a park, your dog's just pulling like crazy. All you want to do is take a nice walk and you just can't stand the fact that your dog is pulling. If you're looking for an answer of what to do exactly in those cases, I'll certainly give you some management tips later, but that is not the ideal time to address this issue. So for me, with leash walking, even with things like come when called, I don't want to get too into that because I want to stay focused on leash walking here. My gold standard for the environmental setup is a big empty field out in public with a 30-foot lead. And if your dog is very excited by other dogs or gets thrown off by those things, you'll want to pursue a more a field where there are less dogs out there. Now, of course, we can't control that completely, but I would say get as close to that as you can. Now, I do understand not everyone can do that. Not everyone has access to that. But if you do, then consider doing that. Another type of environment that you can introduce these introductory lessons in are quiet streets, going out during off-peak hours when there aren't a ton of distractions out there. Because as we said before, one of the main reasons I think that dogs pull is because they're very interested in their environment. We're dealing with smart, curious animals, right? So really important to make sure that we allow them to explore. That's why I like to put a 30-foot lead on a dog. Number one, it allows the dog room to explore. You're not tethered to a 4 or 6-foot leash. So I think there's a lot of benefit to letting them explore. Secondly, you're going to achieve many, many more units of time with a slack leash when they're on a 30-foot leash. And that is the name of the game. Our dogs need to know what it's like to feel that slack leash. And sometimes that means starting with a 30-foot lead. I recommend that you have a 30-foot lead and a 6-foot lead at a bare minimum if you're serious about training your dog. I don't know if we have links to those in the description, but I'm sure you can figure that out. I use biothane leashes because they're easy to clean. So just a tip there. So the idea is to show them what that loose lead feels like. Now, all right, so picture this. You're out in the field, and perhaps Bree may put the video in the description as well. I'm sorry, Bree. I know she's listening to this, where we shot that video of exactly what I'm talking about. So understand the picture. You're in the middle of a field. You're on a 30-foot lead. Your dog is walking around, sniffing around, and inevitably, your dog is going to check in with you at some point. They're going to be like, hey, what's up with that person that I was with or something? And those are the moments we really want to acknowledge from our dogs. We want to say yes. We want to follow that up with a game of tug of war, a fetch game, tossing a ball, really letting them know, hey, this is fun. I love that you looked at me. Here's something that you really, really value. It could also obviously be a treat. I recommend that you have treats in your pocket the moment you wake up. In fact, allow me to be blunt for a moment. If you are not serious about training your dog if you don't put treats in your pocket first thing in the morning. Now, I'm not saying that your relationship needs to be based on transactional behavior where you're just rewarding for every little thing you like, though there's nothing wrong with that. But being in a position in those moments that you can't get back to say yes, and it just helps communicate in no uncertain terms, I'm going to do what I can to give you something you value in that moment. So when your dog gives you those natural check-ins, acknowledge them. Yes. Give them something they love, whatever it is in that particular moment. As far as treats in your pocket, I mean, I walk the walk, right? I didn't do it for the live. I was out taking a walk with my dog this morning. Something to remember with positive reinforcement training is that it is dose dependent. The more you reinforce, the more you are going out of your way to acknowledge your dogs when they're doing something you like, when they're feeling right, when they're in that regulated frame of mind, however you define that for your dog, the better that is. So we just really want to make sure that we're in a position to acknowledge when our dog is doing well. So those check-ins are important. I mentioned 2 types of rewards there when you're in the field with your dog, right? You got food, you got play. What's the third type of reward that you can commonly use? Well, chances are if your dog is really interested in that field we're talking about and they're sniffing and they're looking and they're listening and there's all sorts of things around, let them go right back to doing what they're doing. You see what I mean? So That's another way that we can encourage our dogs to feel calm and also adapt to the environment, which will make future communication with them easy. Now, all is great, right? You're doing this, but all of a sudden a squirrel runs across your path, right? We've done everything we can. We've set up the environment. We're in a very empty field, but there's a deer, there's a squirrel, there's something like that that happens to present itself and distracts our dog enough to be where they may even start lunging and pulling towards that. We're going to talk more about lunging and pulling a little bit later. But in this scenario, don't overreact. You know, you can shorten the lead a little bit, just walk to them, you walk in, you don't pull them back. That's likely to exacerbate things. Thank you for the link in the description there, Bree. And so once we do that, we just pause, let them look. If they are extremely overwhelmed, yes, you may have to escort them away from the squirrel gently, taking taking a wide arc turnaround might be effective in the beginning rather than just going straight back. If you're in that position, if you're in a field, that may be a bit easier. But there's nothing wrong with them observing the squirrel. What we want to prevent is the pursuit of wildlife or anything like that, or whatever the distraction is. So simply just maintaining that 30-foot lead down to 10 feet, let them take it in, and again, wait for that attention to break. They got to sleep sometime, okay? That attention will break at some point, and that is the moment we really want to acknowledge, and then, of course, encourage them, draw them in with your eyes, and energy and being upbeat and jog the other way. Encourage them to pursue you. So strategic stops are important when you're doing this. I know this feels like a lot, but it really isn't. All of it's on video and easy for you to see. Now, it's not to say that it requires no effort. Modern dog training is a skilled activity. It is not something you learn how to do in an afternoon. It does take a lot of practice, but if your headspace is right, if you are prioritizing the welfare of your learner, the dog, if you are really trying to understand in a good faith manner the world from their perspective, you have no choice. You have no choice but to be successful. It is good for leash walking to have a couple of skills already in your dog's pocket, I guess. I like to make sure they know how to do a left turn, a right turn, and a U-turn. That'll help me manage the environment better. So if I see something in the environment that is likely to overwhelm my dog, they have at least some basis of reference to know how to walk away from that thing. So teaching your dog how to turn left. I'm not even talking about fancy heels, left and right, just being able to go left with you. Get them used to going left and right and making a U-turn so that you can easily navigate them around things that may throw them off. These are really valuable skills. Teaching them how to switch sides on a moment's notice. This is something I taught inertia quite young. That's in my inertia series. So that you can be a barrier between your dog and the thing that may be causing them angst. So those are some skills that I would recommend that you teach your dogs as well. Hopefully there'll be a transcript of this. I feel like there was last time, so you can have it summed up however you do that. But always watch the real videos. So those are what I would recommend there. We talked already a little bit about management, but I also want to talk about planning, right? So we have planning and management. What have we done? We've planned the environment to make sure it's acceptable for our dog. We want to cater that environment to our dog's current skill level and emotional level as to not overwhelm them, as to not flood them. So planning is really important, but inevitably you're still going to have management skills. This is really kind of at the heart of the dog training debate, although it's not a debate anymore, but used to be at the heart of the dog training debate. By management, it's like, okay, what do we do to keep our dogs safe? If our dog's in a full-on reaction, trying to pull us, maybe they're going to pull us over if we don't do something. We can't just let them go. See, traditionally, outdated dog training techniques have prioritized correcting a dog with sharp jerks to the neck with a chain collar or a spike collar known as a prong collar, or a shock to the neck with an electric collar. Now, yes, believe me, I know many of you are like, I cannot believe what I'm hearing, but this is kind of the battle we're fighting in dog training right now. There's still and I won't dwell on this, but you might recall the conversation that happened for many years around corporal punishment in children. Is it acceptable to hit children in order to punish them so that they learn better in educational settings? Well, we're long past that now. But basically, in the dog training field, we're in the 1930s, and we're still having that discussion as to whether or not it's okay to hurt dogs when they're doing things we don't like. The evidence, scientific evidence, strongly disagrees with the idea of promoting pain, fear, discomfort, or intimidation as a consequence to unwanted behavior, because there's side effects to that. So in place of that, we need to know how to appropriately manage our dogs. I mean, think about it. If your dog is barking and lunging at something, you can just walk the other way with them. Yeah, you might have to pull them a little bit, but that's why we do conditioning exercises where we get them used to what that tension feels like in a non-aversive way, following it up with treats. And we're not ever putting anything around their neck to control them, because that's just completely outdated stuff. Now, if you do have a really strong dog that's difficult to control, a regular collar and harness, having 2 leashes on, is probably all you need. And in the event that your dog does have an outburst, having those 2 points of contact may help you. But I want to emphasize this to make it crystal clear. The leash, if you are choosing to use modern methods, the best methods mankind has come up with so far to communicate with dogs, we do not use the leash as a communication device. We don't use it to jerk a dog around. We use the leash for a safety net, right? So that's really important as well. We don't rely on it to communicate with our dogs. So you have to start thinking about these things as you're going to train your dog moving forward, especially if you're new. See, whereas old-fashioned dog training focused on correcting unwanted behavior, and this is where many people are in their heads right now who are listening to this, modern dog training focuses on acknowledging desirable behaviors from our dogs, making sure that they are emotionally regulated, that they feel good, because when dogs feel good, they're more likely to be receptive to training exercises, things like that. So that is the 180 that has happened in dog training in the last couple of decades, because it's more successful, because it's humane, because it's good for the welfare of both the person and the dog. And there are no downsides to using positive reinforcement training, especially when we're considering the emotional regulation and the emotional state of our learner. How are you guys liking the chat so far? Let me know. Let me know if you want to see more of these too, please. Another thing when you're doing leash walking with your dog, especially if they are new to this skill and they don't walk nice next to you. Remember, we talked about setting up the environment, whether that's a street that isn't overwhelming to your dog, a neighborhood street, or an empty park or something like that. Let them sniff. Let them explore their environment. I was just watching a video this morning, fascinating, that was showing that a dog's olfactory system, it may be tied to their vision sensor in their brain, something that is completely alien to a human being. We have nothing like that, I don't believe. So we have to be understanding that dogs are on a whole different level when they're smelling things. And so letting them have sniff stops frequently throughout their walks, indefinitely, for the rest of their life, is recommended, not just in the beginning. But if you can get in the habit of that, that will probably set you up for success. If dogs get to smell enough, if they get to explore enough, they tend to become a lot more easy to work with. Now, how are you going to know if you're on the right track? How are you going to know if you're on the right track with your dog when you're doing all of this leash training and things we're recommending? The second half of your walk is where you should start to see results here. You might go 30, 45 minutes in one direction, and then, once you start to see, hey, they're starting to walk pretty good. After this amount of time, maybe it's 5 minutes, it depends on the dog, but after this amount of time, they've started to normalize the environment. They're becoming habituated to it. They feel normal. They're regulated. These are the times that you really want to acknowledge, not just with treats, not just with praise, but in just letting them enjoy themselves without saying a word to them, and just letting them experience what it's like to be on a walk. But that second half of the walk, when you walk back to your house, that's where you should initially start to see the results that you're after. So I hope that helps. When sniffing becomes a problem, Bree said she's going to add that video to the description. Did I make a video called "When Sniffing Becomes a Problem"? That makes sense. Yeah, sounds like a good video. I don't remember it, but I'm sure I liked it. Bree is also mentioning P-mails in the comments. Yeah, who knows what dogs are processing when they smell other dogs' pee? I mean, it's something we like to laugh about, but it's actually a really important part of a dog's experience, being able to do that. So giving them opportunities to do that is important. Bringing toys with you. I'm a little biased. Here's one of Inertia's favorite toys that she's been, pardon the dry dog slobber on it. Bark toys are really good. If your dog is really a chewer, check this thing out. This is a safe stick for your dog to chew on. It's not safe for dogs to chew on sticks. This one, however, this one's a lot more durable. You can see it's got a little give to it, so it's interesting. So if your dog likes to fetch sticks, don't throw them sticks. Throw them something like this. Dogs get injured with sticks all the time, accidentally. It really is a thing. I had to learn this myself. None of my dogs have gotten injured, but I've heard enough stories now. So I don't throw sticks to my dogs anymore. That's a super chewer toy. Bark is giving everyone a free extra toy for every single box. For the first year you're signed up. That is an incredible deal. So whether your dog is a bark box dog, if they like plush toys and squeaky toys and crinkly, that Inertia is slightly partial to these. But if you have a tough dog who's just got serious teeth and they use those teeth on their toys, get a super chewer box for them. Check out this Frisbee too. I'm not going to talk about this forever, but that's pretty cool. I'm anxious to try this one out. Or disc, probably. So pretty cool. That came with Super Chewer, if I'm not mistaken. Also, Pupford, 30-Day Perfect Pup is a free course we've done. And that course, no catches. It's a 30-day crash course in training your dog. We took a rescue dog named Tito, and had him move in with us for several weeks. And we went over all the things that I would teach a dog in those first 30 days. 30 concise videos, nice and short, to the point, easy. Can't recommend it enough. It's gotten great reviews. Just saying. Pupford also makes really good treats. I mentioned this earlier. This is always by my door, my back door at this location anyway. So I have these by my back door. I like to have different types of treats. You may have heard Dr. Zazie Todd in our recent podcast mention that variety is very important when it comes to teaching our dogs. So I have at least 3 different types of treats in here. When dogs don't know what to expect, it can even be more reinforcing to them. These little cheese balls. The problem is I end up eating the cheese ones. I mean, all these are cheese. I mean, these are really high quality dog treats, for real. And they last, like you get the bag and you think, oh, this is kind of a small bag. But a bag, even for me, a dog trainer who's working with my dog pretty frequently, must last a month and a half because I only need to use small pieces. These are Pupford treats too in my pocket. That's what I was just using this morning on my walk. See how small they are? Sometimes if I'm feeling stingy, I'll break them up like that. So, links in the description for 30-Day Perfect Pup, my free dog training class through Pupford and with BarkBox and Super Chewer. Okay, let's talk about recall now. This is the second thing I want to talk about today. Outside, we talked about loose leash walking for those of you just joining us. You'll be able to go back and watch this, I hope, assuming it works. I want to talk about come when called. This is a life-saving skill. It's really important. And I think what people need to hear are many things, but practice this frequently at home, in your living room, in your backyard. I mean, you cannot practice this much. You can't practice this too much. I would recommend that you go as far as committing for at least the next 2 years. I've committed to my entire dog's life of reinforcing come when called. Because what did we say earlier? Positive reinforcement is dose dependent. The more you do it, the more solid your results will be. I have no problem with putting, 10 to 20 treats in my pocket at the beginning of each day so that I can communicate on a whim with I can communicate otherwise, but so that I can really have my communication hold even more weight. If people were shelling out dollar bills every time you listen to them, you might even be more likely to listen to them. So that's one way to think about it. But making sure that you have those treats are a really good idea. So teaching inside, teaching in the backyard. Say you're calling your dog in from their morning potty break and they won't come to you. They're not coming to you. You're calling them over and over in the backyard. This is for those of you who happen to have a backyard, of course. I know not everyone has the same situation. But even going up to them and dropping a treat right in front of them. Again, it has to be something they really like. That's why I only use treats really that are either real meat, or very palatable to dogs. And just drop a treat right in front of them. Walk away. Drop another treat. Just drop a few as you're walking back to the door. And you'll find that with many dogs, that's enough to encourage them. The second they break that threshold or start running towards you, yes, throw a few, just a handful of treats on the floor for them when they come in. If you'll get in the habit of doing that if you commit mentally 6 months to doing this, you'll see results probably in the first few days. But if you're serious and you commit 6 months to this, you're going to have a dog who recalls very reliably, almost certainly. So that's one thing that you can do. We've got to have ways to communicate to our dogs. I like this. I like that. I like that. You can also use play, but for a recall, even most of my dogs have always been really driven by tug of war and fetch. But for a recall, I use food a lot because, really high end food. Like I have some chicken that I made for my dog in the refrigerator. I even use that sometimes. You say yes when they're running towards you. You still got time to run to the refrigerator and get you a little piece of chicken or something that's safe for your dog and give it to them. Dogs remember those things. And we really want to go out of our way to communicate very clearly. Coming to me results in amazing, not good, amazing things for you, dog. So I know like a lot of us feel pretty entitled, don't we? We feel like our dogs should come to us just because we ask. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So we have to really motivate them. A really good game that you can do to help your dog get in the habit of coming back to you, if you have a friend or a partner, a husband, wife, significant other, having your dog run back and forth between you. You can start this in your living room. We did this with Inertia from day one. We would do it in the living room, in the backyard. Then we started traveling a lot and camping in remote places that were just vast and big. And that game got totally out of control with, Bree will tell you about this, and we have it on video. We would videotape this all the time, but it would get out of control because we were doing like 3/4 mile recalls with Inertia, having to run back and forth. Great exercise too. But that's how strong your recall can get in new environments. So really satisfying game, but never be stingy when your dog comes back to you, especially in a uncontrolled environment or an outdoor environment, or at all for that matter. Now, there's some other things you can do. We mentioned this concept earlier when we were talking about leash training, but in the backyard or wherever, I'm trying to think of other scenarios. Maybe your dog isn't listening to you at first, but you notice that glance back. That is your yes moment. That is yes. And if you've done a good job of helping your dog understand that yes means they're going to get something great, then that ought to be helpful for you as well. Shrinking the distance, though, is what you do when that's not working, when they feel like they're just not listening to you. Because for a lot of you, your dog's already used to ignoring you. So you have to be prepared to take a step back and make it easier for your dog. Anytime anything is hard for your dog or they're not listening, if your dog isn't listening to you, we need to assume that we're making it too hard for them or that we haven't done our work yet. They're not being stubborn. They're not willfully not listening to you. They just don't understand what we want. Always, as far as I can tell, virtually always, the answer is to make that exercise, whatever you're asking them to do, half as easy, if not more. So in the case of, I'm calling you from my back deck and you're not coming up here. Okay, now I'm going to go walk down the steps. Now I'm going to try again, maybe. Still not listening? Fine, I'm going to shorten the distance halfway. Still not listening? Okay, well, if they're not listening at this point, you have a lot of work to do on prioritizing come when called in indoor environments. But to make my point, keep shrinking that distance. If you have to shrink that distance to where you're 1 inch in front of them and they look at you and think about taking a step towards you, then acknowledge that. I'm taking it down to the ridiculous here, but actually, that's how you overcome these plateaus. You swallow your pride. You say, you know what? I thought I was there, but I see I'm not there yet, or my dog has taken a step back and they're not doing as good on their recall as they used to. That's what we've got to do. Yeah, okay, Bree is talking about the super chat. Yeah, we do have a super chat here. If we don't normally ask for super chats, but if you would like to, we'll likely contribute that money towards decolonizing animal care to try and making the animal care industry a little bit more compliant with the future and where we see it going, away from pain and fear and towards a direction that values the animals for the sentient beings that they are. And there's a lot going on in the animal care field right now to revolutionize the industry as a whole and beyond. So I'm very grateful to all of those people out there who devote their efforts towards that. If this is a foreign idea to you, I would encourage you to follow us on social media. I've still got more to talk about. But you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I think those are the 3 that I'm on. And of course, you're on YouTube. But we get more into the weeds on decolonization and things like that on social media. Okay, I've covered all of that. I want to make sure that I don't forget anything, so we've written it all down. Once again, I said this earlier, but I have it here in my notes as well, so I'm going to say it again because it's one of those important things. If you don't put pockets, excuse me, if you don't put treats in your pocket when you wake up and get dressed, you are not serious about training your dog. Okay? There should be no ego about giving your dog treats. It always amazes me when I deal with professionals who are so against giving dogs treats. I'm not saying they have to earn their food. In fact, they should not have to earn their food. We're talking about bonus treats, extra good tasting stuff. These are Pupford treats that I use all the time with my dogs. This bowl right here is literally at my door so that I have access to them every time my dogs come running inside or they do something I like. Maybe they start barking out of the window. I can easily call them back, and I'm going to continue to reinforce that. So treats, high quality treats. I mean, there's not an animal on earth that doesn't love high quality food. Chances are if your dog isn't taking treats, they're very overwhelmed in that moment. And that's why we need to modify the environment and make it a little less overwhelming before pursuing more difficult environments, for example. There are other things that can come into play, of course, too. I'm looking to make sure that I'm not too repetitive here because I've said a lot of this already. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to our final topic, which is reactivity, what people colloquially call reactivity. A term, I mean, I get it. We're trying to come up with words that really communicate what it is we're trying to communicate. Typically what we're talking about here is barking and lunging, especially when on a walk, right? At other dogs, other exciting things. Maybe the dog wants to play, maybe they're scared. It could be a variety of things. Either way, we want to be able to keep our dogs under control without yanking them at the neck and telling them to stop, because we don't use that. We don't do that anymore in professional dog training, or we're not supposed to. So like before, it's very important that we set up the environment on our walks. We talked about that, making sure that we have wide spaces where possible, so that we have options to create distance. Distance is so critical. We have to be able to create distance when we're working with reactive dogs. That's not to say you won't hit choke points in some training scenarios where it's difficult to create distance, but broadly speaking, we must be able to create distance with our dogs from the thing that's setting them off, or go left, or go right, or go back, or whatever. Go take a wide arc around the thing. That really says the best trainers in the world, especially in the beginning with a reactive dog, are very good about keeping those triggers from triggering a dog. They're very good about making sure that the dog doesn't feel the need to react very regularly. Now, no one's above that. It's going to happen to the best of us, right? But planning really matters. And it's not because we're trying to avoid everything. It's not because we think we're just going to run from everything that throws our dogs off. We're just trying to give them a chance to perceive the thing without it being overwhelming. Example, imagine there's a big concert at your local city park or whatever, right? Now imagine you've got speakers that are 2 stories tall. Imagine those speakers at full volume when you're right in front of them. Think about how that triggers your nervous system. Think about how that hits you. Now think about being a mile away from those speakers. Does it hit you different? Do you feel different now? Is your amygdala as triggered? No, you're not as triggered, most likely. And so that really is what it's like for our dogs. For us, seeing a dog from 100 feet away versus 10 feet away, not that different. For your dog, it can hit completely different. And so we really need to be aware of that. So we've set up our environment where our goal is to calm the brain and ask for other behaviors second. We're not trying to get our dog to be obedient and sit and stay and come in these moments. We're simply trying to have them achieve a normalized, regulated frame of mind where they act in those environments like they act at home, which is hopefully a good thing. Hopefully they're acceptable at home. That's why dogs behave best at home. It's the environment that they're most familiar with, in part. And so when we normalize other environments as being just an extension of our home or our existence, then, we start to get progress when we do that. Picking routes that are predictable. One of the things I did with Inertia as we were going through a lot of her severe reactivity, relatively severe at times, was we would pick the same route at first. So I would still pick, sometimes when we were at that point, a relatively challenging environment, but she was ready for it. But just for extra insurance, I would stick to that same route so it was more predictable, so she felt more comfortable with it. And I've done this with other dogs as well. So having a predictable route can also help you. So what do? You've backed up. Your dog is almost about to go over threshold. Hopefully they haven't yet. One thing you can do is a scatter, which is where you throw treats into the grass. And again, this presumes your dog is not over threshold in this moment. You've seen the dog coming. You're like, I know where this is headed, but my dog is cool right now. Pull off to a safe spot. Toss some treats into the grass. Takes them a little bit longer to eat it. Gives them a natural outlet for their scavenging behavior. And they're able to feel a bit more fulfilled that way. And you know what? It buys you time. So maybe that dog walks past unnoticed. That's another benefit to scattering. But, give your dog these sniff scatters outside of these events so they know what they are. So just, 2, 3, 4, 5 treats, throw them in the grass. You can start at home, scatter, throw them so that your dog understands what that means. We don't want to wait till we're in the moment ever, ever, ever to train our dogs how to behave. We have to prepare them ahead of time, and we have to do our best to set up the environment in the beginning and intermediate stages until we're there. And that time varies. Now, if your dog is thinking about barking or lunging, you stop. Again, we're trying to keep them under threshold here. And we're looking for that millisecond, that micro moment when their attention breaks. Looks like that, right? That's the moment. Yes, that's your indication. Okay, they're not locked on. That you can draw them back in with your eyes. You can run. You can get exciting. You can break out a toy if they're into that. You can give them a treat, whatever it takes there. But those are your moments that you want to capitalize on. And if you're new to training, yeah, that's going to be challenging because you're probably feeling overwhelmed yourself. But when you mark those tiny moments, that's what's going to help you communicate to them, this is what I want. And don't worry, I'm going to keep you safe. There's some other things you can do if your dog does react. You've done everything you can, but if you're walking in a busy environment, you can always use things in the environment to shield you. If you don't have, like, for example, maybe there's a car, you can walk on the other side of the car. There's a couple of trees you can walk around just to kind of make it a bit easier for your dog. I mentioned it earlier, but one of the things that I teach is a switch, left side versus right side. So I'll just have my dog, come to this side or come to this side. That way, my body is a barrier between them and the other thing, and it enables you to have a little bit more control of the situation as you work through these things. My point is, we never need to jerk our dogs around by the neck or shock them. And I know many of you are not concerned with this, but I have to say these things because the dog training profession is unregulated. So we have a lot of non-credentialed individuals. We have a lot of individuals who have no basis of understanding for what they're talking about. They think they do, but the evidence very much goes against being rough with dogs and calling yourself a trainer. So, and those comments are directed at professionals, not my everyday audience here. But I know what you're up against. It's a buyer beware profession, so you have to be able to see through these things. If your dog does have a reaction, giving them decompression walks, this is just basically a long walk where we try to be very liberal with allowing them to do what they want to do to adjust to the environment. I think that's a great idea. That really is what a lot of this comes down to. Most of your problems will go away when you address the underlying causes, pent up energy, lack of exposure to new places or novel situations. Once you start giving them that exposure in lower doses at first and greater doses in the future, then a lot of that just goes away. So really, I mean, we just have to make sure we're addressing those underlying causes with our dogs, which are easier said than done. But yeah, it can take longer. Some dogs, think about what we expect of a 3-year-old child versus what we expect of a 3-year-old dog. I understand there are differences there, but it's amazing how high the average person's expectation is for a dog. And I think a reason is, especially if you've had a dog before, you grew up with a dog and then you get a new one, you kind of expect them to pick up where the last dog left off more than you might realize. And I think that comes into play. I've noticed that a lot. You got a whole new dog who needs a whole new set of experiences in order to learn how to behave in a way that we like, that keeps them happy as well. So behavior follows feelings. I mean, focus on the feelings, focus on creating a high quality of life for your dog first, and you'll find results come much better for you. Allow your dogs to sniff a lot if they are a sniffy dog. Not all dogs are. My dog Inertia is, so I'm particularly sensitive to that. But allowing them to take in the world with their nose is really important. Get your dog good at doing U-turns, sometimes wide U-turns. It makes a difference if it's wide versus quick. A quick U-turn is more abrasive to many dogs. Being able to do a wide U-turn away from things that are causing them to react is going to be easier for most dogs in the beginning. And let them enjoy their environment wherever possible. But understand that planning definitely beats emergencies. In emergency situations, yes, you can use some level of physical force with your dog to manage them and keep them safe. But the difference is when we're using that physical force, we're not doing it with the aim of teaching them. We're using that physical force with the aim of managing them and keeping them safe or others safe. And that's not something you would rely on. But that is what you have to do sometimes when your dog is over threshold. But again, big difference between yanking them around with a prong collar or a choke chain and simply grabbing the handle on their harness and gently encouraging them to go back. One of the things that we cover in our series these days is conditioning our dog to feel that pressure. Like when I first put a harness on a dog, I like to have a handle on it. And so I'll, pick it up a little, not picking the dog off the ground. Give them a treat just to let them know, hey, that's normal. Because there are going to be times where you want to grab your dog and you don't want them to immediately perceive it as aversive. You're just trying to, keep control of your dog as you are required to do. But I think with these tips, you're going to be really fine, and just keep your expectations realistic. This isn't something we accomplish in a day or a week or a month necessarily, and we have to be prepared for the long haul. And every single dog is completely different. All right, let's see what else we got here. That is the end of my talk, so I'm wondering if we have any questions here. Let's see. I can look over here as well. Oh, there I am. I have another phone set up. Okay, I guess I can't get it working right. I wish I had somebody to give me any questions. My neighborhood is filled with dogs on every block. How do you keep them still under threshold? Um, I mean, it might mean if you do have a car, and again, I don't know what your situation is, but if you're able to go to a more acceptable environment for your dog that doesn't overwhelm them, that might be the place to start, or pursue a neighborhood park or something like that. I mean, there's not much I can tell you if you have off-leash dogs in your neighborhood and they're running up to your dog. I mean, there's no magic answer there. But yeah, I know, and even if you don't have lots of dogs on every block, it's going to feel that way when your dog is, is very sensitive to other dogs. Yes, once Zach starts doing dog impressions, we are getting the really good stuff. Thanks, Bree. I misunderstood the terminology of reactive dog. I understand it's as a nervous dog when they hear unusual noises. She doesn't react to fireworks. She will react to knocking on the front door. Well, yeah. I mean, these are things that are really normal for dogs when it comes to knocking. I mean, my dog barks when someone knocks at the front door, and I'm just fine with that. So the way this is for my entire 20-year career in dog training, I've always been fine with 2-3 barks, 1 to 3 barks somewhere to let me know someone is at the door on the yard, because even though it still can be triggering, my dogs have loud barks, they're still dogs, and I'm not going to suppress their natural behavior to that degree. So I'm going to compromise with the dog. I'm going to, I'm going to help them understand that I like 2 barks. Okay, that's enough. I'm going to look for just a pause and that 3rd bark before the 4th one to say yes and toss one of my Pupford treats out to them. By the way, so we have the cheese. We have the soft ones here, and I've got the freeze-dried ones here. And they make many more. These are just what I happen to have here, but I love the variety of Pupford treats, and I genuinely use them, and I have been using them genuinely for many years. I want you all to understand this, I would never promote a product to you that I don't use myself, that I don't think is great for you and your dog. We turn down way more sponsorships than we accept. So understand that first. BarkBox is also, and it also supports content like this. It helps us continue to encourage the public to use modern, humane methods. BarkBox has made a special deal for our audience. We're thrilled about it. You get an extra toy every single month with your box. For a year, not just once. So free extra toy. BarkBox are often these plush toys. They come with treats, they come with chews. You just get an entire month's supply to make your dog's life heaven, increase their quality of life. It gives you ways to bond with them, gives you ways to facilitate improved communication with your dog. So these are no-brainers for me to promote. It's just a great product. And they're not just any toys, they're tough toys. Have you ever tried ordering a plush dog toy off the internet that isn't a bark one? I mean, it's such a mixed bag. You're very likely going to get one that is borderline unsafe for your dog. So, these are very tough, even though you got it joined here. I mean, that's not ripping apart. You know what I mean? It's still a very tough toy. And Bark has super chewer toys as well, like these, which are even harder for, think about your pit bull type dogs or American bulldogs, really big, strong teeth, or your lab mix. I mean, it could be anything. There's another example. Sorry. There's another example. That's the loudest squeaker I have ever heard. This is a super chewer toy. So high quality toys. 30-Day Perfect Pup also is for those of you just joining us, a crash course that Pupford and I designed. And very straight, to the point videos for those first 30 days of having a dog, or first 30 days of training a dog, not just having a dog. So even if you've had a dog for years, you can still do my 30-Day Perfect Pup. But it's excellent for beginners or those who are interested in learning modern dog training methods, I think. I mean, of course, I'm a bit biased. I was idling down a bike trail, I'm reading right now, next to a hill, and my dog noticed a pheasant, way faster than I could, and she was just about down the hill. Yeah, that happens. That's why we control the environment at first. and hopefully your dog was okay. I'm assuming they were, but that's why I use the 30-foot lead with a young and experienced dog who has not demonstrated yet that they can lay off. I've got a short video. I was out in the mountains the other day of North Georgia, just me and Inertia. We were taking a ride out there, and I pulled over, I played some frisbee with her, and I mean, during the middle of our frisbee game, she was she was in a break, and I noticed there's a deer 50 feet from us. She noticed the deer. She didn't take off after the deer. There was a time in her life when she would have, but we're at that point where she doesn't do that because we have good communication. I was able to communicate, stay with her. Yes, I got it on video. Maybe we'll post it at some point. I'm not sure, but I thought it was a pretty good example. There is hope. Let's see here. I'm just trying to pick these at random. My poodle doesn't come when she wants to stay outside and doesn't come in when the leash is off. With the leash on, she'll come. She has the come command down pat, just knows the consequence. Well, I'm not quite sure if they're not coming to you, they don't have the recall down pat yet. Because to me, what I mean when I say our dog successfully recalls, they'll do it in a variety of different environments, a lot of different environments, and with or without a leash on. So that's why I think if you're having problems with the recall, simply taking a step back and committing your own mind to reinforcing that recall with something your dog loves as close to 100% of the time as possible for the next many months or longer. I think you should commit to a lifetime of doing it, because why not? It's not a big deal to give your dog a treat. You got a dog, they like it. It strengthens the behavior. There's a type out there, because we've been conditioned in colonial culture, I think, to think that it's somehow weakness to give a dog something, to say thank you, I appreciate that you listened, as opposed to punishing them for not listening. This is very much baked into the dog training industry and something we're trying to change, along with thousands of others, of course. To be clear, it's not just us, but it's something we support. Because, when you start to look at the way you treat animals, that's when we can start to that's when we can start to change other things in our society as well. Understanding the roots of problematic dog training is one thing, probably honestly the main thing, that led me down the decolonization trail. Because the more research Bree and I did on why do we train dogs this way? Why are we putting chains around their necks and jerking them around and charging the public thousands of dollars to do this? Because that's typically what it is. Or put a shock collar on them. Like, what are we doing here? What I learned was that is how a certain culture who values domination, who values the controlling of others they perceive as weaker, functions. And that's no way for a society to function. So that is why it is deeper than just treating dogs nice. Okay, I think I'm good here. Hopefully we got some good questions and I answered them. Appreciate you. Free Palestine. Thank you for acknowledging my pin. And yeah, hopefully we will see the world change for the better. That's always on our mind outside of dog training. Of course, we care deeply about that here at the Dog Training Revolution. And we're just trying to make subtle differences in our own profession where we can. And hopefully that contributes to making the world a better place in other areas too. Thank you all for your time. And we will see you in the next live or next video. I've got more videos coming out with Wallace, the German Shepherd Malinois Cross. And if you really want to support our efforts, please support our sponsors, Pupford and Bark. Links below. Thank you.